Maintaining company fleet is one of the biggest challenges for any player in Motortown, and a newly introduced maintenance depot system has quickly become an invaluable asset for any self-respecting company owner. And while this feature might seem quite straightforward at the surface, there are many important things happening under the hood. And in today's video, I will show you everything you need to know about the company depot system, from selecting the most strategic building location all the way to the smallest nuances of their operation. Welcome to Motortown Hub. Before we dive into details, let me give you a quick overview of this feature so you have a basic understanding of how things work. A company depot is a player-built structure that is used to automatically maintain company vehicles. In order to function, the depot must be added to a route as one of the stops, and every time a vehicle visits the building, its condition is restored. Each repair uses some amount of spare parts, which are stored inside the depot building. So instead of manually repairing every single vehicle yourself, you'll just have to resupply the depot every once in a while, and the vehicles will repair themselves autonomously. This makes the process of maintaining your company fleet much more streamlined and less annoying. But before you rush to build your own depot, there are some important decisions that need to be made, and the most important one of them is about finding a good spot to build at. Not only will a well-chosen location directly affect the usefulness of your depot, but it will also potentially save you a bunch of coins. Because once you bought a plot of land, you're stuck with it. No refunds and no way of selling it. And nobody wants to lose hundreds of thousands of coins on a bad investment, so you better be sure before you commit. When looking for a perfect location for your future depot, there are three main factors that you must consider: the geography, the size of the plot, and the layout of local roads. And to make things easier to visualize, I will be marking everything on this handy map. Let's begin with the most obvious one, the size of the property. Depots come in two different sizes, 25 by 25 meters for depot number 1 and 37 by 34 meters for depot number 2. So the size of the lot will dictate what kind of depot you can build there. Since some properties on the map are not big enough to fit even the smallest depot, we can scratch them from the map right away. And Gwangjin properties can also be disregarded because company vehicles can't drive on the off-road trails anyway. But don't worry, it still leaves us with plenty of options to choose from. Any plot of land you can see left on the map will be large enough to fit a small depot, so you can't go wrong here. But if you'd like to build the depot number 2, the one with the larger footprint, then you will have to invest into one of the extra large properties, capable of accommodating it. The main advantage of having a larger depot is a 20% higher spare parts storage capacity, which means that it will be able to maintain your trucks for longer. But if I'm being honest, it is far from being a deal breaker. Even a small depot will still be able to maintain your fleet for ages, and if you place it in a strategic location, it will be extremely beneficial to your company, even if you compare it to a large depot, but placed in a less convenient area. And this brings me nicely to another important thing to consider: the geography. This factor is probably the most subjective of them all, but it is also the most important one. Different plots of land cover different areas, and the routes you run in your company will largely dictate where you need to build your depots. However, some properties are inherently better than the others. For example, this single spot in Biang covers pretty much every possible route coming from one island to another, making it one of the most strategic spots on the whole map. The depot in Gujwa could take care of several important food factories, and this spot in Jeju covers all the traffic coming in and out from the harbor. Unless you plan on covering the whole map with depots, my general advice is to look for the largest hubs, where lots of different routes intersect. This should always give you the most bang for your buck, and I will rate every spot on our little map for its usefulness, according to my personal opinion. The last important thing to consider is a local road layout, because it can render even the best positioned property pretty much useless. You see, company vehicles can't just make a U-turn in the middle of the road. Instead, they need to find some place to loop around, and this leads to certain side effects. Let's take a look at this spot west of Biang, for example. At a first glance, it might look like a pretty decent location, but because it lacks any nearby roads to turn around, a depot placed here will send your vehicles on a very long detour, increasing the running costs, delaying the delivery, and negating the effect of the repairs. If you want your depot to be flexible, having a good local road layout is crucial. It will allow all your vehicles to come and leave in any possible direction and without any detours. With the rating adjusted for the road layouts, this is what our map looks like, and I will add a link to it in the video's description so you can take a closer look for yourself. But keep in mind that the game's world is evolving with every update, and as new roads and industries are being added, the rating of each plot might change in the future. With a location for your depot selected, there is now another decision to make, choosing which depot to build. And while this might seem like another dilemma, in my opinion, this decision is much less important. As I mentioned earlier, depots differ in size of their footprint and their spare parts storage capacity. But in addition to that, there are some other differences. Both depots have different running costs. Their blueprints have a different price, and they require a different amount of construction materials to build. This being said, running costs for either of the depots are so small that compared to a running cost of a single company vehicle, they are barely even noticeable. Thanks to a lower price and less required materials, a small depot is a great choice if you just need to build it quickly and cheaply, and a larger depot is a better solution for a busy area with a lot of traffic, thanks to its extra storage. But even so, the differences between them are so insignificant that you might as well just pick one based on the appearance. And if you've settled for a smaller plot of land, then the decision was already made for you. After finding a good location and deciding on which depot to build, we can finally begin the construction process. You will have to pay a visit to our old friend, the architect, and he will hook you up with the blueprint you need. After placing the blueprint on your property, the construction site will pop up and you will have to deliver all the necessary construction materials to finish the building. The required materials include concrete from the concrete factory, some sand from any construction site, wooden planks from one of the lumber mills, H-beams from the steel mill, and plastic pipes from the plastics factory. And I will leave links to the production chain charts in the video description. After delivering all the materials, your depot will finally be finished and ready for operation. To start using it, all you have to do is to open your company window and go to the route editor. Select the route you want to edit and click on the depot on the map. This will add the depot to the route and your company vehicles will start using it. Keep in mind that every depot will count towards the maximum number of stops available for the route. So if you're using routes with a lot of stops, you might have to make some changes so that there is more room to add new depots. And don't forget to check that the order of the stops is correct after editing each route. With more and more trucks using your depot, its spare parts storage will start to deplete, and once it falls below 20%, a small notification window will appear in the top right of the UI. It means that the depot needs to be resupplied, and to do so, just open the company menu and click on the Depot tab. Here, you will find a list of all your depots, and in order to resupply, just click on the package icon next to the appropriate depot. The game will ask you for a confirmation, and after that, the depot will be restocked. But there is also an alternative way to resupply a depot, and it is by delivering spare parts manually. This method is a bit unusual. When you select any depot from the list, you will notice some yellow lines on the map. Those lines will point to a warehouse, and if you visit it, you will be able to pick up a delivery job to restock your depot. This job can appear randomly in any warehouse, and you have limited time to pick it up, which makes this method somewhat unreliable. And I know what you're thinking. It's much more work compared to just clicking a button, but this method does have some advantages. Firstly, you could try to create a route that will take care of those deliveries for you, and it would completely automate your company. But most importantly, this method of resupplying is crucial for multiplayer, and I will explain why later in the video. And before I forget, while you're still in the depot menu, you could also give each depot a unique name, and it will be reflected in the route editor. This helps to keep things nice and organized, especially when you have several different depots. Now, when planning routes with depots, there are several important things to keep in mind. And perhaps the most crucial one of them is that the depots are sensitive to the direction in which the vehicle is traveling. This means that the vehicle has to be on the same side of the road as the depot in order to use it. As an example, let's take a look at this picturesque OG Lake Depot. When heading westbound, the truck is on the same side of the road as the depot, and it will be serviced with no issues. However, if your vehicle is heading east, it will have to make a huge detour turning around in Ara, coming all the way back to use the depot, and then turning around once again to resume the original course. As you can imagine, this is extremely inefficient. Luckily, most properties on the map will not have this issue, since they have some place to turn around nearby. But you should always pay attention to a few that don't, unless you want to send your vehicles on a wild goose chase. But it's important to mention that this behavior is scheduled to be fixed, so if you're watching this video in the future, this might not be an issue anymore. Noteworthy, the only spot that works in both directions is the Twin Oji property, in the middle of the desert. Another important bit of information has to do with how vehicle condition works. You see, even if the condition of a vehicle drops to 0 during its journey, it will still be able to reach its destination before officially breaking down. Because of that quirk, when setting up long-distance routes, all you really need is just a single depot at the very end of each segment, right before the drop-off point. Despite its bad condition, your vehicle will still be able to travel most of the distance without any maintenance, only repairing at the last moment before completing the delivery and then repeating the journey. However, this method could be considered somewhat exploitative, so the way the vehicle condition system works will probably be changed in the future, but you still can take advantage of this little quirk while it lasts. Now, if you only play the game in single-player mode, then you should be ready to build your own network of depots for your company. But things get a little bit more complicated if you decide to venture to a magical land of online multiplayer. To state the obvious, if a server does not allow usage of AI vehicles, then there is not much practical use you can get from a depot, except for it being just a pretty building to have. But if you happen to play on a server with AI vehicles allowed, then things start to get interesting. First thing I want to make clear is that the depots you have in your single-player world will remain in your single-player world and will not travel with you to a server. Each server is a different world, with its own economy and infrastructure, and is not affected by anything you do outside of it. This being said, your company and all your vehicles will join the server together with you, and in order to keep all your routes in working order, the game will use depots available on the server to substitute the ones you had. Let's say that in your single-player world you have a depot in Gujwa, and your company trucks used it on several different routes. Now, you decided to visit an online server for a while. If this server has a depot at the exact same spot as you did, then the game will automatically detect it and replace it in the route editor, so all your vehicles will just switch to using this depot. This is extremely helpful, since you don't have to manually edit your routes every time you switch to a different server. But keep in mind that this system only works for depots that are located at the exact same property. Every depot on the server can be used by any player, with no restrictions. Usually the owner of the depot is the one who has to take care of resupplying it, but in many cases, the owner might not be online to do so, and other players can't just access someone else's depot from the menu. When this happens, the only way to resupply the depot is by using manual deliveries. This way, players on the server can ensure that everything runs smoothly, even when depot owners are unavailable, and that's why resupplying depots manually is so crucial for the multiplayer. This concludes my guide to the depot system. I hope it will help you to turn your company into a well-oiled and efficient machine. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments section below. It's hard to believe, but this is the 10th video on this channel, so I have a small announcement to make. Since so many of you have reached out to me about it, I will try opening a channel membership. Not sure exactly how it goes, so I will give you some more information in a pinned comment. Huge thanks to the nice people of the Big Belly trucking community for letting me record some footage on the server and even allowing me to build a depot so I could test some stuff for the video. Thank you very much for watching. Your support amazes me and motivates me immensely. Have a good one, and I will see you all behind the wheel.